schiena curva, il sole a picco sulla testa. Eppure soltanto le donne possono compierlo. Occorrono mani delicate e veloci, le stesse mani che pazientemente infilano l'ago e cullano i neonati. Qui parla Radio Torino. Abbiamo voluto offrire oggi ai nostri ascoltatori un programma eccezionale. Ci troviamo fra i treni che trasportano
When Giuseppe De
le
Santis released Bitter Rise back in 1948, it was met with a revering public, but critical denunciations by prominent leftists that saw in it a betrayal of the ethos of neorealism. The very fact that De Santis himself was an avowed socialist that seemed capable of grasping and celebrating the sensuality and vigor of its working class characters, blending it dialectically into a presentiment of Italy's forthcoming cultural assimilation, seemed less important to them than his Hollywood-influenced techniques. In this context, his follow-up film, No Peace Under the Olive Trees, released in the fall of 1950, at a time when the standard language of neorealism had already been critically fortified, serves as a direct response to those accusations and fortifications, betraying a multifacetedness of the term neorealism, bursting it back into life. All it cost was his own career. Giuseppe De Santis was born in Fondi, a province between Naples and Rome, in 1917. At an early age, he moved to a Roman boarding school, which forced him to remember his beloved home region from a distance already mythologized to view. A friendship with Gianni Puccini landed him at Cinema, the biggest Italian film magazine of the 1930s and 40s, existing under the auspice and protection of Vittorio Mussolini during its heyday. De Santis, alongside the likes of Antonioni, Lisani, Pietrangeli, Visconti, helped formulate a doctrine favoring realism that would drive the cinema of post-war Italy. In 1942, he worked with Luchino Visconti and Ossessione. In 1944, with Roberto Rossellini on Desire, the first two incarnations of an anti-fascist, partisan spirit in Italian cinema. During the Liberation, he worked on two vital documentaries, Days of Glory and Our War, as well as the anti-fascist film Outcry, immediately following the end of it, directing several important scenes in both, ones which were already scrutinized by certain critics. Tragic Hunt would be his debut film in 1947, followed by Bitter Rise and No Peace Under Olive Trees. After being held prisoner of war in World War II, young shepherd Francesco Domenicini returns home to the hills of Ciociara, somewhere in the Fondi region. There he finds a new hierarchy. Local landowner Bonfiglio now dominates the area, stolen both Francesco's sheep and girlfriend Lucia, with fellow shepherds silent about the matter for fear of Bonfiglio's wrath. When Francesco goes to repatriate his sheep, he's sentenced for the crime after Bonfiglio suborns the witnesses and bribes the judges. Francesco eventually escapes, seeking revenge, in which he is finally aided by other shepherds and peasants who grow slowly conscious of their position as the exploited. Bonfiglio is forced to run, but the grandeur of the landscape soon catches up with him. Olive Trees is inspired by folk tales and miracle plays of exceptional, near statuesque characters delineated into good and evil. In the film, whose story is grounded in contemporaneous Sicilian land disputes, De Santis nevertheless saw an archaic world that required likewise techniques. Characters eschew eye contact in favor of direct communication with the camera, speaking towards it in highly solemn, direct dialogue that intentionally leaves little room for speculation. The camera, as Adriano Apra writes, places itself purposely as a character between the other characters who move towards the edges of a sharply defined cinematic frame, but never outside its reach, as if they could only be tied to what is visible. Take for instance Raffalone and Lucia Bose's first re-encounter, a beautiful ballet.
Allora hai voglia? Stasera mi portano da lui. C'è una festa a casa sua, perché domani pure lui se ne va con le pecore.
Con le
both partners briefly alternate between object of desire and agent.
Che stai dicendo?
Lo so io.
Non fare guai. Lo sai che voglio bene a te.
E allora? Perché vai da lui?
Non mi toccare. Non ci so sposa a te.
They are actors and historians at the same time, in other words. They are characters and simultaneously readers of a text, De Santis said of them. He would thus become the first Italian director to invoke Brecht. In the film's opening, it is De Santis' voice himself introducing the story and the region, further bursting the distinction between the fictitious and real.
Essa è nota a tutti soltanto come una regione dove la gente porta ai piedi la ciocia e balla il saltarello.
Aligned with its bucolic origins, the frame pairs its characters with a wide landscape, shots in which the two appear as inseparable. The person, yet a shepherd, exists as an integral part of the nature he inhabits. His relationship to it crucial to the denouement of the narrative and his own fate. Realism to De Santis was not entirely a matter of means, but a moral endeavor that consists in placing man and surrounding into proportion. Neither man nor nature on his own can express a sufficient reality. It comes about only in the interplay. During his days at cinema, De Santis advocated for a national cinema that highlighted this very aspect. He found in Murnau, clarity in Renoir, neither muted documentarians nor fatuous poets, but perfect expressions of reality, which De Santis transposed to the Po River, rice fields, or Fondi Hills. To understand De Santis' peculiar strand of neorealism, one must understand his attached importance to landscape. One must also understand his influences. As Centro Sperimentale di Cinematografia, De Santis studied Pudovkin's architectural form and its internal unity. At cinema, he continually heralded Renoir for his poetic expression of life, Wells, Lang, and Sternberg for their chiaroscuro contrasts, King Vidor for his infamous crane. Retroactively, he vindicated Gramsci in his emphasis on popular culture, blending it with Walter Benjamin's call for the politicization of arts. All those influences seamlessly coalesce in his films of the early period, keeping also the dialectical spirit of John Ford's westerns alive, in which myth and reality continuously interchange. His camera takes place of the Gramscian organic intellectual who awakens and resuscitates the masses to consciousness, often through the Vidor-esque crane that reminds them of what and where they belong to. Landscape is central to everything De Santis did. At a time when cinema fled to the cities, he returned to an archaic world and found it full of the opportunities the oversaturated cities now seem to lack. After all, unblemished hills and valleys constituted just as vital a part of Italy's identity as bombed-out cities. As Andrea Martini noted, cinema is not the recording of facts and the shadowing of characters, but the declared staging. As such, De Santis rejects Bazin and Sabatini's characteristics of neorealism most overtly. Yet truly, neorealism's questions for a definite definition has always been a nebulous one. In Open City, Rossellini consciously regards Sabatini's mantra of real locations when framing his German fascists in constructed sets, a deliberate choice of course, to set their artifice against the authenticity of the Italian resistance, a dichotomy furthered in the contrast between Pina's traditional sensuality and Marina's decadent homosexuality. Shoeshine, with its elaborate prison setup shot entirely on a constructed set, does likewise, and while Visconti's La Terra Trema remains true to location and cast, one may observe what Alberto Moravia held against No Peace Under Olive Trees, namely an over-stylization of a simple narrative, born out of a poetic inspiration rather than filmic necessity. While form may differ, what they do share is a hitherto repressed liberatory vigor. Is this impulse, this ethos, however indefinable it may be, however not the core of the films of De Santis? By 1950, for reasons above, his career was all but over, having been barred from the popular cinema discourse by the left and ostracized from filmmaking by the right-leaning Christian Democrat government, whose policies favored facilness over introspection. The fact that De Santis engaged in popular entertainment no one seemed to want to realize. He rebelled against it, as he so often did. With the onset of the 60s, however, he admitted defeat. The bourgeois drama of ennui had taken over. La Garçonnière, a dark, gloomy film, announces the disillusionment of a formerly hopeful, inspired director. Perhaps change, following a dialectical investigations into the falls and potentials of a society. Alberto's reintegration into the workforce in Tragic Hunt. Silvana's salvation in Bitter Rise was never possible to begin with.
Avete visto lottare per avere ragione, poiché si sentiva forte di un suo legittimo diritto. Spesso è costretta ad agire così la gente, dalle mie parti. Francesco era solo, ma ha ottenuto giustizia quando anche gli altri pastori hanno compreso che soltanto uniti gli uomini possono dividere il giusto dall'ingiusto.